Well, thank you for joining us as we go through this series, Thriving in Community, and then we're hitting to week 7 in this one, and the topic is this Thriving Community is talking about the ingredients that can help build a healthy community, and the specific topic we're on is joy, because joy plays such an important role, and so we want to dive more into that in the idea of what's been coined building a joy house. So this comes from the book The 4 Habits of Joyful People by Marcus Warner and Chris Corsi. So we're just kind of sharing stuff that we've kind of gleaned from those books and some adjacent books with that. So and really what I do, this is kind of the part 2 of your sermon on Sunday. Right. Where we started talking about certain exercises, and so this will continue that. But just because it's a continuation, why don't we just do a quick review of what you did on Sunday, just in case people missed it. If they didn't watch it, you can go back and watch it later, but just help you get a little context.
Yeah, sure. So we're talking about the first 2 habits of a joy-filled house, and the first one is the habit of calming. And they like acronyms in the book, so they have the acronym BEST, which stands for breathing, exaggerate, soothe, and truth. So what the idea here is that there's 4 different ways you can calm yourself. One is through breathing exercises. So if you've ever played sports or done target practice or things like that, we know how important breathing can be. So there's actually scientific evidence that breathing can help calm you down. Yeah. The next one is to exaggerate the emotion. And this can be played out 2 ways. It can happen in real time while you're experiencing one of the big emotions, or you can actually practice this when you're not triggered by the emotion. So you sort of pretend you're angry by doing a Hulk pose and growling, and you can actually make yourself feel angry if you adopt the pose and flare your nostrils kind of thing, and then just practice relaxing, calming down, letting it go. And you just get used to the idea that, or your body gets used to the idea that when you are angry, that you can, in fact, calm down. The other one is to soothe. So this is one we're probably most familiar with. What they mean by that is to distract yourself. So walk out of the room, do something else. There's lots of different ways they talk about, just rubbing your arms kind of thing, to give yourself a hug kind of thing. And those are ways just to help the adrenaline or sort of give the adrenaline a place to go in your body when you're particularly during anger kind of thing. And the last one is more about your self-talk, to tell yourself the truth. And that one is really just reassuring yourself that, you can get over this, that we may have acted this way in the past, but we know that through the training we've had and the practices that we've been doing, that we can overcome this, is the idea behind that. The second habit is what's called appreciating. Again, another acronym, GAME, gratitude, or anticipation, memory, and experiences. So gratitude's pretty straightforward. We need to be thankful. And they kind of break up gratitude into 4 or 3 different ones. So when they say gratitude in the GAME acronym, they mean to be kind of mindful in the present. Yeah. So if they're, stop and smell the flowers or roses kind of thing, or, just take a moment in the morning, instead of just gulping your coffee or sipping it while you do something else, just, take a sniff and just kind of enjoy that moment for a second, let everything else just kind of slip away, and look for those times during the day, which our days can be very hectic, and just enjoy simple moments where we kind of get a little retreat, even if it's just for a few minutes, and it just helps add some stability and calmness to our day. The next one is anticipation. So again, this is where we're planning to do something that might be joyful. It might just be, somebody's birthday party, or going out after work on Friday night, just something you're looking forward to that's in the future. Could be a concert, all sorts of things. Picking up a loved one at the airport. And just hold on to that thought. Just think about it a few times during the day or the week, and that can help you, with a lot of the things that can be triggers and anxiety for you during the day. This is just something where you pause. You know what? Having a really lousy day, but I'm really looking forward to that thing. And that just thinking about or anticipating having joy can create joy. The next one is a memory. So this way we're going into the past. This is where your picture album in your phone can be helpful.
For sure.
I've used the Notes app to just write down a few thoughts and put a picture to it of times where it's been a joyful memory for me. And just revisiting those a couple of times a day. Again, using these techniques to sort of build our joy capacity. The last one is, again, very straightforward. It's just experiences. So this is where you just do something you like to do. And this is where you just plan to, if you like to play tennis, to play tennis. If you want to listen to music or, I don't know, play chess. For me, I like to work in the garage. I like to get a little hobby of woodworking. So for me, that's a place of just, I can escape for a little bit. I can make something. I feel productive. Our job here is very research oriented and speaking oriented, and we don't always get the sense of accomplishing or finishing one thing.
Yeah.
And so building something that, you get the process. I can learn new techniques by watching on YouTube, that kind of stuff, and build something. So that's very therapeutic for me. So that's sort of the second habit called appreciating.
Right, and actually in the book Building Bounce, Marcus Warner also writes that one. He actually adds an S to the game acronym, so games.
Makes it games. Okay,
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Well, it's for singing.
Oh, okay.
And yes, as much as it is actually literally for singing, in his description, it's music in general.
Yeah.
And because singing actually does give us more dopamine, singing, humming, whistling, all that can be very helpful for transitioning us to a place of appreciation.
Okay.
And it could be as simple as creating a list or a playlist of songs that make you smile. That's just kind of it.
Yeah, I've had a playlist like that for a long time, actually, where I call it my happy playlist kind of thing. And it's just sort of upbeat songs that I've collected over the years that I like.
Yep. And it's really having those things. And I mean, I think it's just where you have, I'm sure a lot of us have done it, where you play that list while you're driving in the car and you sing along.
Yeah, exactly.
And just something like that.
Where no one else can hear me.
Where no one else can hear you. That's right. Marcus Warner also shares that the Apostle Paul, thought was a big proponent anyway of singing. Yeah. In Colossians 3:16, he says, "Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly, as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts."
Mm-hmm. That also reminded me of Paul in his letter to Ephesians. He said that one of the indications of a life led by the Holy Spirit is songs. In Ephesians 5:18-20, it says, "Don't be drunk with wine, because that will ruin your life. Instead, be filled with the Holy Spirit, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs among yourselves, and making music to the Lord in your hearts, giving thanks for everything to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ."
Right. Yeah. So music is definitely this place that can bring us to appreciation. It can bring up memories, as we talked about, kind of with some of the second habit of appreciation. That could be something that we can use to help. Like you use a picture. Sometimes music.
Yeah, music. Yeah, or it could be a song you and your significant other had when you were dating, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
It's our song kind of thing.
I could remind you of a concert that's a good time.
Yep.
Movie scores can do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Video games. I mean, I know a lot of people connect to video game music, and it's a good time. Spiritual songs, all that. And again, it's just as simple as that. Just kind of, for example, a song that makes me smile is a song called "We'll Meet Again" by Vera Lynn. This is not a song that I would say I'm sort of drawn to personally, that just sort of like that. But it's a song that was really special to my grandparents, and it reminds me of them. When that song plays, there's a picture that was taken of them walking in a park, and it's them walking away from the camera. They're holding hands. It was probably near the end of their lives together. And it's just them walking away from the camera holding hands. And that's the picture that instantly I hear that song. That's where I go, it makes me smile.
Oh, that's a sweet memory.
It reminds me of them telling stories, because they both told stories the same way. They'd be sitting on the chair, their eyes would close, like they were just reliving that story as they're telling it. And so that with that song it's such a great memory attached to it that it makes me smile and it brings joy.
Good.
So we're going to move into the kind of the other two habits that are connected in this book, and we'll start with the first one called storytelling. So this is another way we build a house of joy, And really what we're doing is we're creating stories that has to do with our ability to return to joy or remaining relational, even as we experience the 6 emotions. Now, we did a video on this but a little over a week ago that would have come out. And if you've not watched it, we will encourage you to, after the video, do that. We can throw a link into this just to help you out with that.
But just for a quick review, the 6 big emotions are sadness, anger, disgust, shame, fear, and despair.
That's right. And so what we're doing when we're building the stories, we're building our examples from our lives of how we return to joy, and even how we didn't return.
Okay, that's interesting. That a story about how you messed up can be helpful.
It actually can, and we'll get into that.
Okay.
So when we're compiling these stories, they really talk about compiling 3 different kinds of stories.
Okay.
So the one, where we dealt with a hard emotion, but still acted like ourselves.
Okay, and that's what we're aiming for. Yep.
Yeah, and so we want those stories. We there. 2, where we dealt with a hard emotion, and we were able to recover and return to joy. So maybe there's a little bit of a trip up in the moment and all that, but it was great. 3, where we dealt with a hard emotion, but learned a helpful lesson, even if we had to learn it the hard way.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so we want a few of these stories. We don't just like, hey, I'm going to get a bunch of stories that are that first one where I did really well. Mm-hmm. We want a little bit of everything in there. We want stories where we acted like ourselves so that we are reminded what maturity looks like. Mm. It's not about celebrating how mature we are. It's about reminding, hey, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And even that encouragement that says, I've done this. I can do this.
I can still do this.
Yeah. We want, stories about how we recover the joy and peace and remind that, I'm going to start again. We want to have stories of how we recovered to joy and peace to remind ourselves that we can return to it in spite of the emotions we are experiencing. And so we can be ourselves, we can be relational even when we are triggered.
And so that lends itself into these practices in that maybe the story you tell yourself is how you calmed yourself by practicing one of the calming things and just reminding you that the practices you've been practicing are the ways that have helped you in the past.
Yeah, and so essentially the difference between these two is the first one kind of a smooth transition.
Yeah. Yep.
Like you definitely there, you recognized that trigger, but you were able to do that. This one is you made the transition, but you have to work at it a little bit, and you take a beat and work some of that sort of stuff. But we also want stories and lessons where we learned to return the joy or get to, even if we lost track of who we are. Mm-hmm. So it's these moments where maybe we've done or said something that actually was more harmful, or hurtful in that most thing. And Marcus Warner calls these stories, he says, do-over stories.
Okay.
So we share, when we're compiling these stories, we do share where we drop the ball. So we're not creating a parallel, we were perfect narrative. Mm-hmm. It's we're showing where we dropped the ball, we failed to stay ourselves, but then we add if I could redo this moment,
sure, I
would say this and do that instead. So it really is the approach that sort of better captures what character and values we want to have and believe we have.
So are we telling these stories to ourselves, or are we sharing them with somebody else?
Well, first we are telling them to ourselves. Okay. Absolutely. It is to remind us all that sort of thing. So, because but we also have a chance to share that with others. And so it's kind of a both thing. It's reminding ourselves as well as reminding others.
So there's the thriving in community part, is that
absolutely
this can be something you can do by yourself if you're practiced, but there are some times when we get past being relational and we don't have the capacity to come back to joy ourselves, and that's where other people's stories may help us.
Absolutely. That can really, really help us.
Okay.
So kind of getting back to that last story, because this is probably a big one, because it is important to again, this is what happened and how we, kind of missed it and we tripped and we didn't respond really well. And then we do the do-over story. And so that is, we tell the story as it was, and then we say, if that were to happen, if I can go back, this is what I'd like to do. That again keeps being what character and values. And Marcus Warner actually writes, this kind of story engages our brain's identity center to simulate how we could have handled the situation better in some way. It uses our as-if circuits in the brain to demonstrate how to stay ourselves and recover when feeling emotions and navigating circumstances that are demanding, painful, triggering, and simply just too intense.
So just doing a do-over story and picturing yourself doing it differently can sometimes help when you're triggered again.
Absolutely.
Okay,
It kind of gives us how would I like to do that if I'm in a similar situation.
Sure.
So I'll just share a story like this for me. I'm going to do a do-over story that I have.
Okay.
And so this is maybe about 6 months or so ago. I was working on something in my office. I was kind of getting down on myself because it wasn't coming out the way I wanted it to come out. And I just getting down on myself, beating myself up, thinking like, I should be able to do this. My daughter Addison came down, wanted to show me something. And my response was, I'm working. I will talk to you later. It was harsh. And she just definitely, that look in her face of just like startled in my tone. And she went back upstairs. And probably a minute or two after, I kind of realized what I'd done.
Yeah.
How I talked to her, how like that was not how I want to respond to her or anything like that. And I was stuck in, I was feeling the emotion kind of a shame that was just kind of getting down on myself and thinking like, like a smarter person would have figured this out, but I just not getting this. And then I went upstairs and apologized to her and got her to show me. And then doing the do-over story, kind of same thing. I'm really struggling. Addison comes down, says, I want to show you this thing. And in the do-over story, I just look at Addison, hey, I say, Addison, I'm working on this thing. I don't know why. It's just bugging me. Give me like 20 minutes. I'm just going to try to figure out what I can, and I'll come then find you, and you can show me this thing. I'd really like to do that. Just that whole idea of the ability to just, that's how I want to respond to her in that moment. Yeah, I can't right now, but I really want to. I will come to you in 20 minutes. So just things like that, so we can do that.
That's a good example. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. So when we start to think of these stories, in any one of these three kind of stories, we want to start with smaller, moderate emotions. We don't want to start with the worst thing that's ever happened, because that is absolutely going to probably derail us.
Yeah.
We can do, I share that story that I just like, that is definitely not the biggest story that I have in my kind of, as I build the stories, but that is one of the ones where I started kind of start with and sort of like, hey, it wasn't good, but it wasn't the worst thing that ever happened.
But too, it also fell into the number 2 category where you did actually go and apologize.
I did get to
but if all of our stories are the number 3 type, where we're having to constantly think of do-overs, then that may not be the most helpful.
Yeah. And so we start with stories that maybe emotions aren't as strong with it. We can build to the bigger emotion stories. In the story, we want to talk about how our, even our body felt, when we were upset, and then even how it felt once we recovered. We want to talk about where we were, like the setting. We want to maybe talk about what's triggered the emotion. And then we want to talk about the emotion that we were experiencing, because this might, when we kind of compile these stories, it might kind of reveal which emotions we do struggle returning from. We might find ourselves, this one constantly, it's maybe a 2 at best, a 3. It's like, oh, maybe this is an emotion for something that I need to really look at. There's a trigger here. Yeah,
and we talked about that in a previous podcast, where there are 6 big emotions, and you're not going to be good at all 6. Likely, there's probably going to be 1 or 2 where you struggle to return to joy or remain yourself.
Exactly. And then the big thing is we want to either, depending on the story, we want to talk about how we acted like ourselves. We might want to talk about how we recovered, or we want to talk about the lesson we learned. And again, the lesson we learned is when we do the do-over story of like, if I could go back, I want to do it this way. And tell ourselves that story.
So we're training our brains then to how we want to act in recovery.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on to the last habit, which is attacking toxic thoughts. So how does this one work?
Well, this is where beliefs can play a major role in our emotions. Now, just so we're not talking about religious beliefs right here.
Sure.
We're talking about thoughts, toxic thoughts that come. An emotion can trigger a flood of those thoughts, as well as thoughts can trigger a flood of emotions. It can kind of go both ways.
We've said all along that most of our responses to triggers happen on the right side of our brain. Yeah. This one's kind of leaning into the left a little bit.
Well, it does both.
Yeah.
And so, we see some of those where
the right triggers the left.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's just being aware of that, and it can be coming kind of both ways. Mm-hmm. So we can have certain emotions, like, say, anger. It's an emotion that can contribute thoughts that maybe we've learned kind of along the way. Mm-hmm. And it's just, this is the stuff we think when we feel this way. And it might be even understandable why we feel this way. But they are the thoughts that there, like anger, it just could be like, no one ever does it right. I have to do it myself.
Yeah.
Kind of thing could be a constant thought when anger arises.
And that usually derives from a memory where we were triggered by something, and anything that triggers anger brings up that previous memory, which may not even be related to the situation.
Absolutely.
And people are looking at us like, why are you overreacting to this little thing?
Well, we've learned to think that way. And again, there might be a real understandable reason as to why.
Yeah.
This is not a beat yourself up moment.
Yeah.
It might be hard. I'm really good at beating myself up.
Yeah.
So I'm saying this to myself as much as anyone else.
Sure. I'll do.
Marcus Warner writes, really big emotions can shut us down, get us stuck with overwhelming thoughts in our head.
And I think you even mentioned that in your story, is that even when you realize what you've done to your daughter, you heaped more shame on yourself.
I did.
And so it can start that downward spiral we've talked about.
Yeah, I was already feeling the emotion of shame when I kind of realized I had snapped at her.
Yeah.
I just like it more triggers of shame came in there. So, and those thoughts can trigger emotions, and we react in that belief, whether it's true or not.
Sure.
So, example thought might be like, hey, something happened and someone is sabotaging me. Like whatever emotion gets elicited or what happened, there's no way out, or everyone rejects me. All of these can be these kind of toxic thoughts that can attack.
Which only amplifies the emotion.
Absolutely. It just builds on. It's like a snowball going down the hill. It just builds on itself. So some of these beliefs can be a result of trauma. Mm-hmm. So just a few things I want to say is as we kind of talk a little bit more about this, is I want to say we need to have grace for ourselves. Mm-hmm. Really important to be a part of a loving community. And we might need the aid, because like I said, it could be a result of trauma. We might need the aid of a mental health professional.
Absolutely, yes.
And so it's really important that we are kind of aware of those. All three of those things need to kind of be in play. And there's nothing wrong with finding help with a mental health professional.
No,
really,
absolutely
really
not.
important.
And as we're learning here, the loving community actually can be a great partnership with the mental health professional to aid in the healing.
Absolutely. So our toxic thoughts are attached to those 6 emotions, which we've talked about. And just a reminder, we don't always necessarily feel the emotions or just one of those emotions. Usually there can be a various combinations as well as intensities.
Sure.
When it comes to intensities, one of the examples Marcus Warner gives is when it comes to annoyance, that is a low-level anger.
Sure.
But rage is a high-level anger.
Usually
but it's still, and it looks can look a little different, but it's still that emotion of anger. What we can do is we can kind of look at one of these emotions, whatever it is, anger, shame, whatever it is. We can make a list of maybe some of the thoughts that can often attach them. Mm-hmm. So it's really good. We can take our phone. We just say like, okay, shame, whatever that is, and we can kind of like, okay, this is the thought I have, when that thing kind of gets triggered. And then what we can do is make a list that we can call replacement thoughts.
Oh, I like that.
So an example is a toxic thought might be, there's no way out of this mess. That's what happens. Replacement thought is, unexpected reversals for the good often happen.
Sure.
And so again, what we're kind of doing is we're preparing ourselves so when that toxic thought comes, and it probably will come, we can have a thought kind of there. And sometimes, in my experience, having it written down somewhere definitely helps because when it's triggered, it's really hard to just conjure that up yourself.
Sure. And I think that's what you've said here is really makes a lot of sense in that if you prepare ahead of time and you have it written down, then you're not trying to, what was I supposed to think of it? Because you can't think when you're really angry.
No,
right? So,
no, you can be really stuck.
Yeah, and it's, oh yeah, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget.
That's right.
It's easily referenced, and I mean the easiest way to do that is put it on your phone because those things never leave our side.
Yes, we often have those. Let's just like it's a reality. Let's use it to our benefit. So yeah, that thought that can hopefully that we want to replace is hopefully far more helpful.
Yes,
and again, takes time. It's not going to be just an immediate thing. We might have to work it through that. One of the things we also can do is take some time to find the evidence or experiences that reinforce those toxic thoughts. Because again, there might be an understandable reason why we have those thoughts. Mm-hmm. And so we are, as you sort of talk, like the anger can be really kind of reaching back to something that happened here. And this thing is somehow unrelated, but it's connecting. It's sometimes we do want to find that foundation. Oh, there's an understanding of why I've come to there.
And I think that in my experience, that's where the mental health professional can be very
really,
helpful.
Really important for that.
That was very helpful to me because I couldn't make the connection on my own. In one particular case, I was struggling with something, and through the counseling process, we were able to determine, oh, that's what's making me respond that way, and then just understanding what it was helped. We come up with some strategies to deal with it. So,
another thing is also helpful to get feedback from people who love you, whose face light up when they see you. So we talked about that, the joy thing.
Yeah.
And invite them to share with you qualities that they enjoy about you. Mm-hmm. And that is hopefully something that'll help in the idea that, replacement toxic thoughts that might be there. And with that, please don't forget to return the favor. We do that to each other.
We've done that for each other before where, we may see ourselves a certain way or be triggered by something which brings on feelings of makes us feel a certain way, and just having someone else to be able to say, that's not how I see you at all. I see this positive thing in you is a real way to in the case that I can remember between us, it was really helpful that to help those feelings subside, because it's a lot of these practices are related. It comes back to telling the truth. You're not always as bad as you feel like you are, and other people don't see you that way. They can see the good in you still. So. Yeah,
I've heard it said sometimes our mirrors are distorted.
Yeah,
and we need someone else to tell us how we really
I like
look.
that. Yeah.
Anyway, there's some great exercises in the 4 Habits of Joy-Filled People that can really just are far more detailed, that can help us in the whole attacking toxic thoughts. But one more, we come close to this close here. An important note in this discussion is that these toxic thoughts can also be toxic motivators, and we can use them in our decision making as well as in our relationships. So it's really good, and yes, it is hard. We need to ask those questions if we are using any of these big emotions to, 1, motivate ourselves, and 2, motivate others. What we also want to ask in that is, when we might come to the answer is yes, we are, is to how can I then use joy to motivate ourselves, and how we can use joy to motivate others.
Because I think our culture is very used to motivating by fear.
Very much.
Competition is fear.
Yeah.
Fear of missing out. Just control. Yeah. So narcissism, those kinds of things that will want to control people. So you're always using fear as a motivator. You're going to displease me, or those kinds of things. And that's very common even in lots of work environments. But again, the research here shows that being motivated by joy is much more productive.
It is more productive. And I would say, like, at least some of the things that I've heard when it comes to fear is fear does motivate people. And the big reason we use it is it does it faster.
Yeah.
And I don't know that joy, I don't want to say, I haven't done enough research on it to say that joy can do it faster, but that's not really the point. The joy does it better.
And longer.
And healthier.
Yeah, and healthier.
And that's what we
want.
That's sustaining this.
Yeah. Very much so. Well, that brings us to the end of this particular session. So thanks again for being with us and on this journey as we're discovering how we can thrive in community as followers of Jesus and grow and mature in our faith and just understand our bodies and our brains a little better. So usually we give you something to think about, and I think an easy one for this week is maybe just share some music with us. What's your favorite song? Yeah. What song do you listen to? Your go-to song that kind of when you're feeling sad or when you're feeling angry or whatever that can help snap that mood and get you back on track. And if there's a particular one, you can put it in the comments. We'd love to hear about it. And I hope you can join us next time. And please don't forget to like and subscribe.